This video is very different from what I usually make, even on this channel's nightmarish mishmash of formats. Usually I like to cover a topic that I have a lot of experience with through a lens of objectivity to give a subjective opinion, but this is something that is mighty personal to me. Everything will be kept anonymous for obvious reasons. I want to talk today about an experience that I've been having for the last year, the lessons it's taught me, and, I don't know, maybe also have it serve as a plea to the person that it's about. I think there are really valuable lessons to be learned here, especially because relationships, emotions, feelings, and depression aren't really something that's taught in school despite being so important to most people. Maybe this will end up being one of the most important videos I ever make. Good thing it's set to a backdrop of unedited Titanfall 2 footage. Everyone needs ways of coping wholly on their own. What works varies from person to person wildly. Some go to exercise, lots video games, some laying on the goddamn floor. Whatever works, works. These typically go by coping mechanisms, but I don't really like the term all that much because it is extremely fucking vague. What the actual fuck does that mean? Tools to not feel like shit is a much more to-the-point term for what they actually are. Ways to help yourself live without feeling miserable. Most, like video games, are forms of distractions or escapism, which, trust me, I know all too well. There is a danger here. If you rely on escapism too much, it can be hard to, well, remember to live in reality. Example, I was relying on escapism constantly while growing up, and after moving out realized I had to actually be present in day-to-day life, and couldn't in fact just subsist while staring at a screen, for the most part. Lots of escapism doubles as entertainment, such as books, shows, YouTube, and games, and so they're easy to get addicted to. This has been rough to get myself out of, but it's much better than the alternative of wanting to die. There's something I had to rely on for a reason, and that's because life fucking sucked. Had I not relied on these things, I would be dead. Even with them, I came pretty close to the other side. There is really no other way to put it. I needed stuff like YouTube and games to distract me so I didn't focus on how fucked up my situation was. If I instead truly sat down and did a big introspective look of how my sheltered life compared to others, I would have just killed myself. So, what happens when you see someone else going through something this awful? What are you supposed to do? That's kind of the conundrum I found myself in. Normally I'd go by the usual answer to this question, which is, ignore them, but what if instead of it being some random guy, it was someone that you really liked, really respected, and you had feelings for? What the actual fuck are you supposed to do then? I told someone just over a year ago that I had feelings for them, which is still true. They told me at the time, to paraphrase, that they hate themselves too much to consider anything like that. That is still one of the most powerful things I've ever been told, and it's still something I'm thinking on even a year on. I tried to be the person that I wanted when I was in that position. Someone who was positive, optimistic, and always there. Making that assumption is precisely how I learned to stop projecting what I wanted onto everyone else. Because, as it turns out, that is not what everyone wants. People are formed, like 99%, from the experiences they had growing up through childhood and beyond. If you get taught good habits, you're probably going to keep them. And if you don't get taught them, unless you figured them out on your own, which is pretty unlikely given no direction, you're going to be left out in the rain. You don't exactly learn to hate yourself from stellar life experiences. I'm not sure what caused it in their case, and it would be incredibly rude to speculate, but I can say with certainty that this kind of thing does not form without some incredibly intense trauma. You don't learn that you're unlovable because you just so happened to wake up one day and decided that was just how it was. That was gonna be the case from now on. It's taken me a long time to come to the conclusions that I have now. When I told them originally that I thought they were special to me, their immediate reaction at the time was very amicable and reasonable, and their response had absolutely no problems with me, only themselves. Over time, though, they got harder to reach, much more flighty, and generally worse. I interpreted this as I suspect you will. Oh, they must have not liked me back. But from what I have heard from them, it's gotten really clear that no, it is actually from truly horrific levels of depression. See, when you form this extremely intrinsic view about yourself, that you fucking suck, and everyone hates you, you're gonna actively reject anything that contradicts that. When someone who you're friends with tells you, hey, I think I might love you, and you convince yourself that you are unlovable, your brain explodes. Sometimes this can be a good thing, and it'll let you seriously reconsider beliefs that you held about yourself. Other times, if said beliefs are really, really deeply held, as they were in this case, It can kind of act like a self-fulfilling poison. Not immediately either, it takes a while. Suddenly, everything you do is held under the lens of your subconscious, asking yourself if you are truly worthy of that admiration. Entirely unknown to me and them, it was a compliment that served as infinite, volatile ammunition for depression to weaponize as imposter syndrome, or as it's known more colloquially, the Among Us disease. Why did I write that? The actual fact of the matter is that whether you're worthy of love or not is completely irrelevant. People don't love others because of logic, they love them because they just do. Whether someone is good enough is not even remotely relevant. I can't choose who I have feelings for, and if they do pop on someone, they're going to receive them regardless of how much they think they deserve it or not. I simply don't care if you deserve them. I care if you want them or not. The go-to here is to see a professional, but that's extremely hard to do when you're that deep in depression, and said depression can trick you into continuing to live through it instead of seeking help. My former therapist told me that pretty much no one he ever saw thought they had it the worst. Even someone like me, who really did go through the ringer growing up, enough to get diagnosed with a condition that people come back from war with, I figured there were still people that still had it worse than me. If you truly are one of those people who are having it the worst, speaking from experience, you're going to convince yourself that you aren't actually having it that bad, and so shouldn't seek out help because it'll take away from others. Don't do this. I refused to self-diagnose myself with depression for a decade, and nearly killed myself as a result. Even if it's just a hunch, go ask for help. Providing that is a medical professional's job, whether they be a primary care physician, a therapist, or a nurse. Sometimes you truly can't handle everything on your own. You can either needlessly pain yourself continuing to try, or much less painfully circumvent it entirely. No one is going to judge you. It is a doctor's job to get told other people's problems all day, and then try to fix them. So, inevitably, when I asked them to seek out therapy, they said no. Now, if you find yourself in my situation, you might as well hang up the towel and fuck off, but that's not, frankly, a realistic option. It's all too easy to just say, well, you should give up, but it's much harder to actually do that when it's someone that you care about. I wasn't going to completely drop talking to someone who I had known and liked for years, maybe a week after developing feelings for them because they were having it rough mentally. I have been there, and I wanted to help. Pretty much no one I talked to about this thought this was a good idea, but looking back now, this was not a mistake. But it has undeniably been hard. That being said, I don't regret it at all. I would like to wrap all of this up with a happy ending, but I'm afraid that's not quite how life works. Sometimes people are in the shitter, and they haven't got out of it yet, and that's okay. Something like this, though, is always recoverable from. Even if you have had the worst possible life experiences, having proper coping skills, tools to not feel like shit, are going to help you be able to live comfortably. A therapist and a doctor can help you get on that path. You need only want to get better, and that's something depression can cloud very easily. Depression can very, very easily convince you that you want to be sad, but it's lying. Taking the first step to get help will make the others fall into place on their own afterwards, and you just have to be wary of depression trying to keep its place in your mind. It still tackles me sometimes, just as it did while I was writing this, but I know how to deal with it now, so it's okay. That first step can be calling your doctor or a therapist's office, asking a friend for help, or even just telling your dad about what you're struggling with. Good friends will always be there to help you, and they'll want to, too. I know I've wanted to help for a long time. I've learned way more about myself from liking this person than I could ever fit into this script. I spent months of my life learning how to combat cognitive distortions which have tortured me for my entire life, and I don't make any assumptions about people anymore. Regardless of how things shake out, I've grown a lot and I'm extremely grateful to know them. If you're watching this, and you'll know who you are, well, you know how I feel about you. I hope that you want to get better. It's never impossible.